usually accompanied by a six-pack. I remember as a kid watching my father when they played Blood on the Risers or the All-American song, and he would change, his demeanor would change. He was young again, he was back in the paratroopers. We all remember the wise old sergeants that we had in the paratroopers. Like the one who told us, referring to the T-10 parachute, "Son, I got more time in a T-10 than you got in a T-shirt." Or the one who told us that if our main parachute failed, to take our time deploying the reserve because we had the rest of our life to do it. Or the platoon sergeant I had in my first platoon who had fought in Vietnam with the Marines, and one day I was teaching a class to my platoon on how to react to an ambush. He interrupted me and said, "Sir, have you ever actually been in an ambush?" And you can guess how the rest of that lesson went. I want to recognize tonight a friend of mine, Luke. Could you stand up? Luke Fancher and I served as rifle platoon leaders together in the 82nd, and tonight's the first time we see each other. Seen each other since 1990. It appears that he still does PT while I have given that habit up. But Lou and I worked for a guy who was affectionately known as Mad Jack. He was our brigade commander. And I'm assuming he'll back me up on this story. But Mad Jack was a legend. He had biceps the size of most people's legs. And he had served multiple tours in Vietnam, including a tour with a unit that was the precursor to Delta Force. And the legend went that before Lou and I got to the unit, Mad Jack had some marital difficulties. And his wife at the time hired someone to kill him. And Jack was coming out of a bar at the end of a night, and the would-be assassin approached him with a pistol and attempted to commit the act, and Mad Jack defended himself. A couple shots went off, and the assassin was subdued. That was at about 2 o'clock in the morning in Fayetteville. The next day at 0600, Mad Jack showed up for physical training. He had a patch on his head and his arm in a sling. And he stood up in front of the battalion and he said, "Men, if he wants to kill a paratrooper, he better bring more than a goddamn 38. He proceeded to watch his battalion run the 5 miles that they ran most mornings. But there are also the more somber stories, the stories of war, and the stories that are the history of the paratrooper. There are men like James McGallis, who commanded Company H of the 3rd Battalion of the 504 Infantry, 82nd Airborne Division of World War II. One of the most highly decorated soldiers in the history of the 82nd Airborne. He received the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, and was nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor. He crossed the river at Nijmegen. You all may have seen that movie where they crossed over in small rafts while under intense enemy fire. At that same battle, another paratrooper named Tao was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. McGillis went on to fight at the Battle of Bulge, where as a company commander, he personally assaulted a German tank, climbed on it and dropped a grenade in and disabled the tank, sparing his entire company. McGillis and Tao are typical of the paratroopers before and since, who demonstrate extraordinary bravery in battle. Men like Colonel Bob Howard. And I want to recognize we have a colonel here. Colonel, if you could stand up. Special Forces Colonel here tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Special Forces. He was a Green Beret. In the tradition of his family, he was from Alabama. His father and 4 uncles all served as paratroopers in the Second World War. Here is what Major John Plaster said about Colonel Howard, who was awarded the Medal of Honor for one of the many battles that he was in Vietnam. Colonel Howard was a 30-year-old Sergeant First Class in Vietnam in 1968. He was magnificent. Take all the John Wayne films, throw in Clint Eastwood, and these fictions could not measure up to the reality that was Colonel Bob Howard. He was awarded 8 Purple Hearts for his service in Vietnam, despite the fact that he was wounded 14 times. 6 of the wounds Colonel Howard decided on his own weren't bad enough to submit for the Purple Heart. He was shot at and in close contact with the enemy many more times. He was awarded the Medal of Honor for one particular battle, and at the ceremony where the President Nixon, awarded him the medal, he asked him, was there anything he wanted to do while he was in Washington, D.C.? Would he want to have lunch at the White House? Would he want a tour of the White House or anything else? And Howard replied he only wanted to go to the tomb of the unknown soldier to share his thoughts with others who had gone before him. This tradition of gallantry and selflessness continues today. Let me just read to you 2 instances of the bravery of the modern paratrooper in today's battles. You will see that even though the year and the location change, there is one constant: the paratrooper. Specialist Christopher Corriveau and Specialist Eric Moser, both of C Company, 2nd Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, received the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism in action. Corriveau was part of a 4-man sniper team, and Moser was his designated marksman. They distinguished themselves on August 26, 2007 in Iraq. Surrounded and attacked by an enemy force 10 times superior to their own, the men and their fellow paratroopers valiantly repelled the enemy attack with withering small arms fire and grenades, according to their superiors. Their sniper team fought off an overwhelming enemy force for control of the rooftops for more than 10 minutes in close combat, killing or wounding at least 10 enemies in the process. Sergeant First Class William Tomlin, 1st Battalion, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 82nd Airborne Division, was awarded the Silver Star for gallantry in action, April 9, 2007. While serving as a scout platoon leader in Afghanistan, he distinguished himself against an enemy force that outnumbered his own by 6 to 1. Tomlin led several dismounted counterattacks against the enemy at the risk of his own life. Through his personal leadership, courage, and dedication, he was a key component to the victory in that battle. In your program tonight, you will find the stories of 2 sons of Pennsylvania, Bobby Dembowski and Colby Umbro, 2 paratroopers who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. Brave young men who volunteered twice, once to serve their country in wartime and once to serve as paratroopers, a second time to serve as paratroopers. We honor them most of all this evening. President Lincoln wrote a now famous letter to a mother in Massachusetts who had lost 5 sons in the Civil War. Lincoln was aware that there were no words that could help with the loss. He wrote in part, "I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to save. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice on the altar of freedom." Surely if Lincoln were alive today and writing to the parents of today's fallen paratroopers, he would have added, "I pray that our Heavenly Father may leave you with the solemn pride that your son was a paratrooper." Somewhere tonight in Afghanistan or Iraq or in the rubble of Haiti, there are paratroopers on patrol. Keep them in your thoughts and prayers and rest easy knowing that they are on duty. I thank you for coming out tonight. I thank you all, those of you who served, for your service, and have a good evening.